Thank you very much. So we celebrate the Vice Chancellor and members of the management team. Hope to see them tomorrow.
Alors, le vice-chancelier, son équipe va sortir pour revenir demain. Et nous voudrions profiter pour leur dire merci beaucoup et revenir demain pour continuer la séance.
And so please, without much ado, the presentations continue as I invite Professor Mary Wanguwe. She will be speaking on gender, women, Pan-African.
Alors nous allons appeler la dame professeure Mary.
Please let's make welcome her as she comes to the rostrum. Madam, 10 minutes. Thank you. Yes. I know you can. Please do the much you can to stay on.
Thank you so much. I hope you can all hear me at the back.
Very well, very well.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. So, Pan-Africanism is about resistance. It's about self-affirmation. It's about self-control, independence, and all the values that matter to who we are as people. And when you look at the history of Africa, you realize that we have been doing this for a very long time, and that women have been at the center of resistance and the protection of what Africa is, African values. I didn't have yes, I have Okay. Yeah, so I had prepared a PowerPoint, but I'm supposed to summarize in a few minutes, so I decided I'll just do it. Okay, so as I was saying, when you look at the history of Africa, you realize that Africa has always been invaded, attacked, and we have lots of things that we've been resisting. And women in Africa have really led the way in trying to do it. So when we talk about Pan-Africanism, we want to think about examples and models that we've had in history that show us the way in trying to reaffirm ourselves, to reclaim our values, and to be who we are and to love who we are as Africans. And so my paper essentially is titled Gender, Women and Pan-Africanism, and their logic reflection on women in Pan-Africanism. My focus will be today on heroines and mothers of Pan-Africanism to highlight how women have been at the center of trying to reaffirm who we are, to protect our culture, our people, and ourselves. So, in the 18th century, I'm going to begin there by giving a few examples. In the 18th century, there's this lady called Beatrice Kimpa-Vita. And Beatrice Kimpa-Vita was from the Kingdom of Congo. And she was Catholic. You know, at the time, Congo was essentially being colonized by the Portuguese. And the Catholic religion was the dominant religion in Congo. But we have Kimpa-Vita, who starts to preach. And what she was preaching was essentially the self-affirmation, or a religion that speaks to the African people, a religion that speaks to the Africanness of who we are. And so she resisted the Portuguese colonial administration. But she also started preaching about the Black Jesus. She was talking about a Jesus who speaks to the African people, a Jesus who connects with the culture of the African people. Because the Christ that had been brought by the missionaries at the time wasn't really connecting with the African people. So we have her as a very good model of resistance, resisting within the church by trying to preach the message using you can hear me? Okay. So she's a really good model for us to see that women have always led, and they continue to lead to this day. Looking back in history as well, we know about the Kandakes. Some of you probably know who is the Kandake. The Kandakes were the queens who ruled Kush, Egypt at the time, and Ethiopia at the time. And these women defended their kingdoms against foreign invasion, including the Roman Empire. They defended when Alexander the Great invaded Africa. There's one of these Kandake, marineras, who essentially went to battle. She led 30,000 soldiers to battle. She went with them and fought the Roman Empire until she lost her eye. She fought on the battle with her own son, leading the way. Kandakes, actually, the name is romanicized as a Candace. No, the name Candace. Essentially, it's the Kandakes of the African experience. She's mentioned in the Bible. Right? Most of these stories are mentioned in the Bible. So there were many of them. She wasn't the only one. There were many other Kandakes who led the kingdoms as queens that we need to look back and see what they did as we progress towards Pan-Africanism. Some of you know or have heard about Makeda, the Queen of Sheba, right? How many of you have heard of Makeba? Yes, Makeba is also another example, another model. She was the Queen of Ethiopia, and she did wonderful things. But one thing that makes her remembered was the fact that she went and visited King Solomon, right? And out of that visit, we got Menelik, right? And Haile Selassie comes from that lineage because of that visit that she made. But during that time, those connections where queens in Africa would meet kings elsewhere and lead the way. Well, coming back home, you know about Ya Asantewa, the Ashanti queen, who resisted the British occupation when she defended the Golden Stool. Right? The British came and they wanted to go to the Asante. You guys know about the Golden Stool and how sacred that stool is. And these British guys wanted to sit on that stool. Yasantewa could not allow it. She resisted it. She says you cannot define the Golden Stool. And so she's another example just to show how women have always led. Then, of course, in Dahomey, we have Queen Tasi Hambe. Hambe founded the legendary Amazon warriors, a warrior of women defending their own community. She led this particular force and eventually had an army of women. I wish I had my PowerPoint of showing that to you, but I don't have it. But she led that, and that's just another example of how women have always led. You've heard of Amina, the Queen of Zaria, who also fought in the military campaigns, where she even had to fortify walls to protect her own region. Resistance. Invaders should not come in and take what we have. So she had to fortify her own walls and her own cities against foreign invasion. So that's ancient models, or heroines I call them, because they really showed us the way. I mean, we have stories about them. Quite often they are not in the books for us to learn about. But when we look at Pan-Africanism as a movement, we also have mothers who've essentially led the way. And those mothers also are Africans, and others, of course, are in the African diaspora. So I'll just mention a few of them because of time. Fumilayo Ransome Kuti, here in Nigeria, led the 1949 protest of 10,000 people against King Adimona, who was essentially defending the British, and she resisted. So she was able to say, we cannot allow them to take over our country, and so we should not allow them to take over our culture and everything else. Of course, we know about Winnie Mandela, who fought alongside Nelson Mandela in trying to defend South Africa, as another one that we can remember. Now, when we go to the African diaspora, we have a lady called Queen Nani of the Maroons. Queen Nani of the Maroons, she essentially resisted slavery. Even though they had been taken into slavery, she fought them. She fought the slaves, and she actually decided she needed land for the people who had been taken in slavery so that they can live free. So she resisted colonization and discrimination. Of course, you know Amy Garvey, the wife of Marcus Garvey, who also resisted in many ways. She wrote a lot of articles about resisting discrimination. I'm going to talk about Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth is an African-American activist, and for her, she essentially lobbied against segregation in the Americas, against the black people. She even fought the United States government, arguing that they needed land put aside for the black slaves who had been freed. And she got recognized, actually. She was invited into White House by the US president just to recognize her resistance. So when we look at all these forms of resistance that we're talking about, which is essentially about Pan-Africanism, it's all about reaffirming who we are, what we can do, our own accomplishments, and retelling our stories, because our daughters and our sons need to hear these stories so that they can learn to protect and defend their own country. Thank you so much.